Careers in industrial organizational psychology. So this is one of the concentrations we have here in the psychology department is an IO concentration. That one, there's a lot of business coursework integrated into it, as well as human resources coursework. And commonly people who do the IO concentration here in psychology will get a minor in business from Bowler. And if you get a minor in business from Bowler and you take one additional class, a finance class, then you qualify for the 5th-year MBA program, where you get an MBA in 1 year instead of 2 years from Bowler. Last person I talked to from the program said it was about $10,000 to $12,000 total for the program for John Carroll students, which is cheap, particularly for the education. Anyway, in terms of careers in industrial organizational psychology, IO psychology is just the application of psychological principles to the workforce. In terms of it focuses on both the employees as well as the organization as a whole. So the industrial part of it, that has to do with the psychology of employees, individual employees. Some different focuses for industrial psychologists are, who do we pick for a job, who's best fit for a job, where should they go within an organization, evaluating performance over time of individual employees, and then also training and education. So that's the industrial aspect of industrial organizational. Organizational, of course, that aspect focuses on the functioning of the organization as a whole. Focusing how do we, increase efficiency, worker satisfaction overall, what sorts of organizational structures are going to be most effective. Basically, how do we make our company as productive as possible and improve the worker satisfaction overall. Now, for IO psychologists, most of them with doctoral degrees work in business and government settings, and then the others, about 25% of IO psychologists, those with a doctoral degree, will be in academia, teaching, doing research, etc., similar to what I do as a clinical psychologist. We will briefly, in terms of salaries, we see larger salaries with IO psychologists in a wide range, and salaries vary depending upon where somebody's working. So in terms of the private sector, there's consulting firms, and then there's more stable business or industry jobs, which pay less but have less risk associated with them, because consulting firms, those are firms that contract with different organizations, and so sometimes there's no contracts, right? Whereas if you're working for one business, you're going to have more stable employment. So IO, one of the highest ranking in terms of highest paying subfields in psychology. To become a psychologist, regardless of the type, and including IO psychologists, you have to have a doctoral degree. And the IO psychology programs go by a lot of different names. So if you're interested in this area, you'll just want to use multiple keywords in your search for those graduate programs. There are also opportunities related to IO psychology in terms of careers with a master's degree. We'll watch a short video of someone who's a human resources organizational developmental specialist with a master's degree now. Okay. In terms of working with a bachelor's degree with in fields related to IO, you can make some pretty good money, in management positions, human resources positions, and also, have the ability to work directly with people. And psychology is certainly relevant to all that. These soft skills. We see here some median salaries. People who work in human resources with a bachelor's degree focus on recruiting, hiring, promoting, firing, and compensating employees. If you're looking for human resources jobs, they're going to have different titles depending on where you're applying. They all mean similar things, but benefits coordinator, personnel administrator, human resource associate, those are HR jobs that you might be interested in. And one consideration for people who go into IO psychology is at the master's level, do I want to get a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology, or do I want to get something called a master's in business administration? Both have good career options, but master's in business administration, you have more career options in general. So something to keep in mind. Got a video here of a IO psychologist talking about what they do, advice for graduate school. This is something you're interested in.
When I graduate, I would like to work as an internal or external consultant, solving organizational problems using the expertise that I have gained here in this program. I like this kind of work because it allows me to help people sort of in an indirect way. I think people often think of psychologists as like helping people, and although industrial organizational psychologists or IOs, we don't sit and consult with people or counsel them in that sort of therapy way. We do help people in that we are able to select people who are going to be a really great fit for the jobs. They'll probably be happier there. Select coworkers that will have the right skills and abilities to help the other people working there support their jobs as well, and also to train people so that they're better prepared to do the work that they're already doing for the organization. So I like that you're kind of helping people in a unique way, not the way that you usually think of with psychology, but still very important. So the reason that I chose IO is sort of a roundabout story. Like most IO psychologists, I don't think many people grow up thinking, I'll be a psychologist, an IO psychologist when I grow up. So all through undergrad, I focused on cognitive psychology. So that's like learning, decision making, those kinds of things. And I really loved the research. I thought research was just like the greatest thing in the world. I loved it very much. But as I was delving deeper into cognitive and really thinking about career paths, one of the things that bothered me was that it seemed like there wasn't a lot of direct application to helping people right now with their lives. It seemed like a lot of the focus was on doing basic research, which is important, but for me personally, I wanted to be able to see a little more application. So I was explaining this problem to a friend and colleague at the time and saying that, I really was looking for something where I could apply my work directly, and she said, you should really check out IO psychology. It sounds like exactly the kind of thing that you're looking for. So I took her advice and I went and visited a faculty member, and she was absolutely right. I love that I still get to do a lot of the things that I did in cognitive. I study training. Training is all about learning. But at the same time, when I'm done with my work at the end of the day, I can say, and this is exactly how an organization should use this right now, or here are some best practices for organizations based on the literature. So I really like that IO allows that direct application. So the kind of courses and learning that I've done in the program, I think are kind of common among IO programs. The first thing that I think of with a PhD program is research, and I think no matter what kind of PhD you're doing, you're going to do a lot of research, and ours is definitely no different. My experience is being involved in a lot of different research projects. So I've done obviously my master's thesis. Right now I'm working on my dissertation, but I've done a lot of other different kinds of research projects, which I really appreciate because it's given me a really broad view of the field, and it's also allowed me to have a lot of things to talk about whenever, for example, I interviewed for internships. I had a lot of different experiences to share in the interview, which I think was really helpful. So speaking of internships, the other thing that I think of as really common with IO programs in terms of learning is people do a lot of internships. So for me, I've only done one. I did one over the summer, just this last summer, but some people do more, and I don't think there's generally any pushback to do an internship. They're generally encouraged. It's one of the great ways to get applied experience before you graduate. Sometimes we do some sort of applied projects in our classes, like we did one to develop a performance appraisal system for a police department, which was really cool and really interesting. But I got a lot more applied experience whenever I was able to do my internship, which I really appreciated. Most of the internships are paid, which is always nice as a grad student, but just the quality of experience that you get is just so great. And just like my PhD program, I found that there was a lot of variety in the projects that I got to do over the summer, which I really appreciated.
Hi, my name is Brittany and I'm a Human Resources and Organizational Development consultant. I'm an internal consultant at a healthcare system. My typical day varies because sometimes I will spend all day presenting to groups for training or new employee orientation. I work very closely with directors in 2 departments, which is Human Resources as well as Organizational Development. I work in an office primarily. Some days I'll work independently and I'll do research all day. And other days I may spend at the hospital doing coaching with leaders in order to improve the work environment for their employees so that they can in turn provide better patient care, which will then in turn impact our market share, for instance. So other things that I do include training or just customize approaches to improve business results. Things that I'm responsible for my job, I'll kind of expand on that. I'm responsible for planning and implementing special projects for the Chief Human Resource Officer of our healthcare system. She is the what they call the CHRO, and she's a Senior Vice President. So a lot of times she will assign me to work on special projects in which I have to develop a project plan, an implementation plan, and then actually implement it and keep her abreast as to what's going on. Sometimes that includes budgets. Additionally, I facilitate new employee orientation, and so we have orientation every 2 weeks. And typically we have about 50 new employees that we hire. So we have a rotating schedule. So every 2 weeks I'm facilitating at least 1 day of orientation. I also do training development. So if there's a specified training need in the healthcare system, I will work with the director of organizational development as well as the director of education, and we will all 3 conduct a needs assessment and then design the training program to best meet the needs of the individuals that need the training. Further, I mentioned earlier that I coach leaders within the healthcare system. So that really just means that I spend a specific amount of time, usually an hour, talking to them about their work environment. So things that are going well for their employees, any recurring issues that they may have, and then things that aren't going very well. And we talk about potential things that we can do to improve the work environment to impact turnover. So to reduce turnover, which then reduces costs for our healthcare system. I also do a lot of research. I do internal research as well as external research. So for internal research, I would try to identify reasons for turnover, as I mentioned, as well as identifying the best places to recruit some employees, for instance, or designing a new model for conducting business. So I would do research on the leading practice in the industry for business design, things of that nature. Also, I do a lot of writing. I write policies, I write the training, I write presentations, I write articles for our bi-weekly newsletter that we do here. I also write communications for our senior leaders. I do an initial draft and then they edit it based on the content that they specifically want. And then a major part of my job, and my favorite part of my job, is working with the employee opinion survey or the employee satisfaction survey. And we do that about every 2 years, and I'm responsible for planning that process as well as implementing it and following up on it. So I plan the survey process, so to deploy the survey, share the results, teach the leaders of the work groups how to interpret their results. And then action planning is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of making their work group a better place to work. So how to improve the work environment so that people are happy when they come to work. And I really enjoy that because I get to do a lot of different things that involve data analysis. I work with the leaders directly in improving their work environment. And I also hear a lot from the associates as to what they like to do here, and things that are going well and then things that aren't going so well. And then I then can make changes based on what they tell me, and that's very rewarding for me. Typical hours that I work a week would be about 45. Our office hours are from 8 to 4:30 with a 30-minute lunch break, but typically I work from about 7:30 in the morning until about 5. And it's sad to say, but I actually eat right here at my desk most days, so I don't take my 30-minute lunch break. We're in healthcare, and so some healthcare systems do it differently, but here we are allowed 30 minutes, just like the clinical staff, for lunch. And sometimes my work requires that I work in the evenings or on weekends to accommodate the employees that work night shift or solely on weekends. So if I'm doing focus groups or things of that nature, I have to come in when they're working so that I can get their input as well. In terms of the stress level for my job, it's not incredibly stressful, and I say that because I see people that are, doing neurosurgery or delivering babies, and I think that that would be incredibly stressful. The majority of my stress comes from meeting deadlines. So deadlines imposed by other people and then making sure that my deliverable is ready in time.
Hi, I'm Sherry Riedel, Benefits Coordinator in the Human Resources Department. What I do at Otter Power is I coordinate the administration of the company benefit programs on the employee level for benefits such as health, dental, life, LTD, and employee pension benefits. I'm responsible for the annual enrollment process each year and also responsible for preparing the annual benefit statements. I enjoy the variety of work in HR and the daily contact with our employees and retirees. In this role, I'm able to meet with our new hires during employee orientation as they begin their career with us, and on the other end, I get to work through the complete retirement process for those moving on to the next chapter of their lives.